Time Nutrition. This is Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian nutritionist with Baby Bloom Nutrition. And today I am lucky to have Naureen Hunani Ali, who is also a registered dietitian in Quebec. And thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk about some fun food play therapy.
Thanks for having me. It's really my pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, well, I'm always excited to connect with another like-minded professional. And if you've been watching Naptime Nutrition for a while, or you've been to Toddler Test Kitchen, you know that I'm a huge advocate of playing with food in different ways. And with Toddler Test Kitchen, we really take that in a very specific direction, cooking. And if you've been to a class, you know that we don't pressure the kids to try it at the end. So it's like a 50-50 whether they actually put it in their mouth or not. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that Naureen has some wonderful pearls of wisdom to explain why I don't pressure kids to actually try the recipes. And also I want to talk about why we advocate food play now, when obviously all of our parents kind of go nuts with this concept and think we're crazy hippies, right? So can you say something about that? Why are our parents so against it?
Well, I think that our parents are against it because it's messy, and they feel that perhaps, it's not appropriate because when you're playing with food, you have to kind of leave the table manners, right, aside. So you really have to be able to get messy and explore food the way you feel comfortable. Now, I'll tell you a little story about my childhood. My brother growing up was very picky, and my mom had her own little version of food play to help him. And we see a lot of grandparents doing, applying this, where they use play as a distraction. So the spoon becomes like a plane, and while the baby's not looking or not paying attention, you're shoving food, right? That is not food play, right? That's more distraction type of approach, yeah.
Right, that's not what we're advocating here.
No.
Yeah. So what is food play then?
So food play basically is exploring food in a playful manner without any expectations and judgments, right? And it's not outcome based. So we're really allowing babies when they start solids and they're exploring with the food, getting messy, really allowing them to explore food at their own pace without having that pressure, without pressuring them to try it. And basically, food play is great for all children, but specifically for children who never actually had the chance to play and explore food due to sensory challenges. So a lot of the children that I see in my practice never really explored food or didn't really like getting messy. So sometimes that's a warning sign that, okay, maybe there were some issues going on that didn't allow the child to develop that relationship. And often there are sensory-based issues.
Right, and you deal with a lot of sensory-based issues in your practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so going to refer back to our handy little outline because we kind of talked about it ahead of time. So why is it important for kids to get messy?
I think it's really important because children who are picky eaters, often what ends up happening is that the only time they get exposed to food is when they're supposed to eat it. So that time period, where they can just do whatever they want. If they want to smell the food, or if they want to break the piece of carrot and see what it sounds like, if they're interested, if they're genuinely interested about exploring food, that doesn't happen during meal times because often parents will put that pressure that you have to eat it. Right. So I think that because of this reason, it's important to have that exposure outside of meal times, so you can develop that healthy relationship, repair that relationship, right? If you've always been forced to eat something and you're not necessarily ready to eat it, you're not going to eat it later on, right? So to have that chance to decide whether or not you like this food, or if you don't like it, if it's a smell you don't like, and also for children that are a little bit older, it gives them the opportunity to develop that vocabulary, right? Oh, I don't like the way this feels, right? Because they have the chance to play with it, they will feel it and they will tell you, well, I don't like it. And it stops right there. If you don't like the way it feels, then how are you going to eat it, right? If it's something doesn't feel right on your hands, or if you don't like the smell. So that's why it's really important to have that opportunity in a non-pressured environment to kind of explore food in a way that will help you at meal times.
Right. And I always love getting perspective that can help us feel a little more compassionate when our kids are having trouble. And something that you said in a previous webinar really hit me, that kids who have sensory issues, either sensory processing disorder or something similar, they feel things differently. They get too much information. If they touch an orange, it might feel like a cactus, and then why are they going to want to eat that?
Exactly. So your body is smart. So if your fingers are sending messages and your brain is saying, hey, that feels like a cactus, our bodies are smart. The body will tell you, do not put it in your mouth, right?
Right.
That's their perspective, and that's how they are collecting the information, the data, right, from the world. We may not feel that way, but that is what's really happening inside their bodies. So it's so important to be compassionate. It's so important to understand that not everybody likes to eat foods that have mixed textures or explode in the mouth, feeling like grapes and cherry tomatoes. A lot of kids I work with don't like that because it's just too much and it gets so overstimulating for them, and it becomes very aversive.
Right, and you even mentioned the sensation of a grape skin inside the cheek, feeling like a burning sensation.
Exactly. Some children don't like that, that feeling of the skin of the fruit. So a lot of kids will say no skin, right? So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
children that I see will eat apples but without skin. No skin, please, right? Because again, it feels very strange for them. That experience, the sensory experience for them, it's not the same. So I think it's our role to figure out why feeding is aversive, why some textures or colors or flavors don't agree with the body, and then teach them the vocabulary too, so kids can advocate for themselves as well, because they are confused sometimes too, because they can't explain us why they don't like an orange, for example.
Right, right. And that's something I focus on at Toddler Test Kitchen as well, as developing the vocabulary to
Absolutely.
describe those sensations. Because if a child can't communicate, then we don't know what they're thinking, we don't know what they're feeling. And it can be very frustrating on the part of the parent, which leaves us with a real lack of tools for dealing with a difficult situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I know, coming from in my family's perspective, we have different relationships with food. My husband's family is from a former Soviet country, and they grew up with a different idea of food just because of the political atmosphere, etc. And
Mm-hmm.
so, seeing kids play with food is not necessarily something very comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a waste, even if it does eventually get in the mouth, which often, thankfully at my table, it often does, but it's the process is very important. And
Absolutely.
sometimes we need to look back on where these perspectives are coming from, where our own discomfort is coming from, and think this is really what's in the best interest of my child. Here's how we're going to move forward and develop a healthy relationship together.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that one. Especially, I find that I see this a lot also during intro to solids, right? When a
Mm-hmm.
lot of food is ending up on the floor and the parents are so concerned that, let's say, they're not getting enough nutrition in them, so they feel that, okay, they should be able to feed the baby, and if they allow the baby to feed themselves, or if they're making mess and it's all ending up on the floor, that can also be quite anxiety provoking
Yes.
for some families as well. So yeah.
Yes, yeah, and I agree with that. I've heard about families feeding their kids in the bathtub, and while I wouldn't say that's a good idea in general, if you're going to give them yogurt for the first time and if you want to, you want them to have fun with it, there's sometimes that's a bit of an easier cleanup. So, what's the difference between you were talking about not focusing on the outcome? So,
Mhm.
what is the difference between play and work?
So I would say that play is typically child led, right? So you're giving the child the opportunity to join in the play. The play has to be inviting, and then a child is can leave the play anytime they want, right? So work is not the same, right? So work is typically outcome based. And we have objectives and goals and things like that. Where play, it's really there uh, to enhance the well-being of the child. Play is also very important for infant and child development as well, and it's very important the to develop a positive relationship between caregiver and child. So I highly encourage parents to play with their children, not just with food in general, but like just play in general. I think it's so important. And I would say it's a complete opposite as work.
Right. So it seems to me that the same activity done outside of normal eating times and done during normal eating times, one could be work and one could be play, just because there's the inherent idea if a play activity is done during a mealtime, there's that inherent pressure because it's a mealtime, because the mealtime has a start time and an end time, and there's probably something scheduled for right after, bath time or some other activity. And so that's why it's best to take your play and not encourage that during mealtime, but have it at an entirely different place, or sometimes different location, definitely a different time, to really differentiate between work and play.
It's definitely, although I feel that sometimes what happens is children that I work with, they enjoy play so much, playing with food, that it will sometimes show up in meal times. And for me, that's totally fine. So if a child, shows interest, learning about peas, for example, and they just want to sit there and count the peas, I'm totally okay with that. If they're not ready to eat the peas yet, that's totally fine too. So I think that often we will see that relationship kind of develop during meal times as well. And we do need to be careful about not criticizing the child for showing these behaviors.
Right. I think what I had meant to say, I'm just getting over a cold here, things are a bit fuzzy, is if you're looking to start play, don't start it during mealtime. Should it spill over into mealtime, that's perfectly acceptable.
Absolutely. So yes, if you're going to do food play, it's always best outside of meal times.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course that's going to spill into mealtime, and that's fine as well. It's I always advise people when they're starting, either with cooking or with solid food introduction, you want to make sure you have enough time, because this is an activity. Absolutely. And it's not an activity that needs to have solid time constraints on it. So when you're going to do this, make sure you sit down and have time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of fun. So we talked about how it benefits selective or hesitant or reluctant eaters. You mentioned the word picky, and of course we say that in order to relate to people watching, because people know what picky means.
Exactly.
But it's best to not use that term in front of your child, because then they really own it.
Absolutely. And I find that there is a teeny bit of stigma associated with that term too. I personally don't like the term picky either, because to me, I really view feeding as a skill, right? So if a child with speech delay, if there's a child with speech delay, we will not call that child picky talker.
Right.
So I find that sometimes the word picky it's kind of the same thing as being choosy, right? When in reality, a lot of these children are not necessarily being choosy; they just cannot eat certain things. So, but I do use it because, like you said, it's people can relate and understand. But at the same time, I find that it's personally, I don't love the term picky eating.
Yeah, so that would just explain the reason why sometimes we use it and sometimes we don't.
Exactly.
But it's best to not use it in front of kids. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I figured we'd be on the same page with that. So if someone is finding that their child is a hesitant eater, a little bit slow to try new things, how would you say is the best way to start with food play?
With food play, I think the first thing is really to establish a good structure, a good routine, work on the parent-child relationship as well. The DOR, which I know you've talked about in the past. So I think it's really important to establish that. And then move forward with food play. Sometimes what happens is that when a child is used to being pressured, or the parents have been pressuring a lot, and then they whip out like bananas or grapes and let's have food play, the child will not make that association. They will not feel safe that, okay, this is really truly play. So I think first it's really important to have that structure to reduce pressure, and sometimes have that conversation, right, that I spoke about earlier, to sit down and really speak to the child and let them know that, you know what, from now on, I'm not going to be pressuring you, or you'll not be asked to try anything you don't want to. And we really respect that. Whatever, we want you to listen to your body, right? And then eventually, when there is a good routine and structure, you can start food play outside of mealtime and meal times, and start with something fun, something easy that your child, depending on where they are developmentally, sometimes it could be something simple as like counting different fruit and vegetables. You can also use veggies as veggie sticks, for example, carrot sticks, celery sticks, as paintbrushes to do some artwork. There was this one child that I was working with, and he was very afraid of yellow cheese. And so what we did is we used yellow food coloring, and we made all kinds of yellow colored foods, which is so interesting for him to see. So I think it's really important to know your child and what they will enjoy and what they will not. And again, focusing on the sensory aspect. So how can we explore food? How can we play with food using all our senses, not necessarily the sense of taste, right? So the eyes, the color of the food, what shape it is, the smell, if your child is comfortable or not. Also, if a food is loud or not. When we choose, some children do not like loud foods because for them it's too much sensory wise to eat a raw carrot, for example. So it really depends on your child. It really depends on what they like, but you can come up with so many different games.
Yeah, and we were emailing earlier in the week about this woman. I should post this link. Who was holding up pieces of fruits and vegetables and making it look like her daughter was wearing it. And I just think that it was so much fun. And you could just frame that and put it around the house.
I know, that was so fun. I absolutely loved it. I so see myself doing something like that with my kids.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I find sometimes what's helpful, I was working with this one girl, and I think I sent you a picture of the carrots with herbs on them. It's a dried
oh
mint.
yeah, let me pull that up.
Yes. So I was working with this one girl on the autism spectrum, and basically we had a food play session together, and she is absolutely petrified, like so scared of herbs in her food. So she has never touched a food with herbs. And so I had asked mom to actually make her own herbs, like dried herbs. So mom went and bought mint, and she dried it, and she made her own dried mint. And then this little girl made this little carrot family, and I believe those are oranges and those are blankets, and they're all sleeping in their bed. And I thought it was so cute because she really went in there with her hands and explored the herbs with her hands, and she had never ever really touched a food that contained herbs like that. So I thought it was so interesting how much you can enjoy playing with these ingredients when the pressure to eat is not there.
So she just made a little carrot family and tucked them in bed.
She made a carrot family. We put a little bit of hummus on the head, and then she went and sprinkled the herbs. It was just so wonderful, and it was so fun, and she was so happy.
That's really fun. That's really fun. Yeah.
I think so we also have another picture of a ring made with a carrot, with a green grape.
Oh, with the grape. Yes. Yeah, I was wondering what that was. Okay, so tell me about this one.
Yeah, so that's a sweet potato and grape ring. And again, this picture was taken at one of my sessions. And when I do my sessions, there's always a parent there involved, and we do very hands-on play, and I want the parents to be able to learn as well. So this mom, it was very, very, very fun because she came up with this idea and she made a ring, and her son was so impressed, and he did the same thing. So that was a lot of fun as well.
That is very cool. Okay, what's some of this other stuff you sent me?
I believe there was the letters. That's really fun too. So
Okay, we have it.
And making letters. So that's a really fun one. Writing names. And I think there was another one that was a tree made with cinnamon stick and cheese and chocolate chips.
Oh, I didn't know what this one was. Okay.
Yeah, so my daughter actually made that one. So that was fun as well. It's always really nice to include ingredients that your children are comfortable eating and touching. And then you can add some other ingredients. Sometimes children can pick ingredients as well. You know, we can ask our children, well, what would you like to explore? You know, what are you curious about, right? So that could be fun too, to have like a mix of both preferred and non-preferred foods.
Right. Okay, so I was wondering what's going on in this picture.
Oh yes. That's a messy one. So we were exploring different green colored foods. I was working with this boy, and he is just so bright and so adorable. And so what we did is we actually dissected peas, green beans, and we had some grapes as well. So we cut them and we opened them up and we counted how many peas were inside each vegetable, and also looked at green grapes to see, if they also had seeds inside. And it was really hands-on, super tactile activity, which was really, really fun as well. Yeah.
That is cool. Yeah, it does look like a science experiment, so that's what we were going for. Very cool. And there was one more here.
Yes, so that one actually is an activity for the sense of smell. So children who are sensitive, because there are a lot of children that are really, really sensitive to smell. And sometimes labeling smells can be interesting. So they have the vocabulary, right? They can let you know. Sometimes playing these type of games could be interesting too, because you don't get a huge smell when something is inside a container. You can just open it up a little bit, close it. You can play guessing games, which is nice. I encourage not to put very stinky foods that your children don't like when you're playing these type of games. So it is important to understand that when you are doing food play, not every, you don't have to necessarily put like foods that the child dislikes. It could be just with foods that they enjoy, right?
Right.
And they'll still get that nice sensory, experience from it. So I think I have in there, I can't really see the picture really well right now, but I believe there's some cinnamon sticks. I think there's some cheese, a lemon, and I think those are blueberries, and there's something else in there. I think maybe hummus or something.
Yeah, maybe it looks like something kind of pasty.
Yes.
Interesting.
So that could be fun. And another thing that is really interesting for smell is making stickers that have smell. So you can either use like different essential oils or different ingredients that are liquid that will dry up, and you make like these scratch and smell stickers. That could be really, really fun too.
Yeah, you talked about that, and that sounds like a lot of fun, because kids love stickers anyway, so that's a really gentle exposure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so I definitely want to show this, exploring with our senses, and you have a boy version and a girl version.
So I developed this one because I find it really helps to have something like this for children who are just starting to play with food, don't know where to start, and we can structure the play somewhat, right? So it's nice to talk about the senses and how we use our senses to explore food and learn about food. And then this is there as a guide, like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to use my eyes today. and explore this apple with my eyes, right? And then you can talk about the color, whether it's round or not. So this is kind of like a guide that can be helpful. I also have a poster version of this that I use in daycares as well when I do more hands-on work with children and in groups, and we explore foods in like a very mindful way, really being there in the moment, using all our senses without any judgment. So it can be a nice little, handout when you're just starting.
That's great. I think it's really fun how you structured it. It's taking play to another level, and and it really is a type of therapy.
It is
And
very therapeutic, yes.
this is something that I've advocated, not from, I don't have nearly as much experience specifically in this, but I've advocated parents before they introduce solid foods doing some play with it, playing with spaghetti and playing with, I love telling people to get a huge thing of broccoli that's raw, because it has so many different colors and feelings going on, just the different
Yes.
shades of green and the stalk versus the top, and
Absolutely,
it's fun.
absolutely. Broccoli is great for that. I even have a video of my daughter actually, and she's doing like a broccoli tickle, and she has a little thing of broccoli, and she's tickling herself, and she's giggling and cracking up. And then my son saw that, and he thought it was so funny, and he did it too. And of course, he wanted me to record him as well. And I think it's so much fun to use food even before, like you said, it's introduced, and just explore it. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fun. So you've given us a lot of great tips on how to start and how to take this from the screen into your home. But so here's the most important question now. So we can have fun with this, but at what point do parents know that they need to seek professional help?
I think that if a parent is concerned, just you being concerned as a parent, I think it warrants professional help. It could just be something simple as a consultation sometimes, right? But it reduces parental anxiety. And I think that is so, so, so important. We don't talk enough about, how hard it can be for these families. Especially when there's so much judgment around, right? When it comes to feeding, parents have to deal with a lot. They have to deal with their own anxiety, and then they also have to face what others are saying about their child or their feeding approach. So I think it's really important to get the support. If you feel like something's not right, meal times are stressful, you don't know how to support your child has a limited diet. I mean, there's so many reasons why parents can consult, but I really feel that if there is a concern, if the parent is concerned, that warrants consultation.
Okay, well, that's very helpful. I know that there are a lot of different places addressing feeding issues now, and you have a lot of overlap between dietitians and occupational therapists and speech therapists. And so it's important to find someone you connect with, your child connects with, in order to overcome this obstacle and feel more confident in your parenting and to help your child in a healthy relationship towards food.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So anything else that you really want to bring to light?
I think one thing that I'm very passionate about is advocating for our kids that are picky. I feel that, again, it's a topic we don't talk a lot about. A lot of children that I work with, because their diets are so limited, will get food shamed at school, and a lot of schools now have very strict policies in regards to what children can bring or what they cannot bring. And I think it's really important for parents to know their rights as well, because we feel that we want to protect our children. Like, we want to make sure that they're getting the nutrients that they need. But again, there's so much going on in other environments. So how feeding issues impact psychosocial functioning, right? So really, teaching parents how to advocate for their children, I think, is so, so important, because it does impact mental health as well, right?
Right. And on that note, another dietitian and I just wrote a letter that's intended for principals and administrators of schools. And should you, as a parent, feel that nutrition is not being handled in a healthy and conducive way for your children, this I can post the link to this. You can print out
Please
this
do.
PDF and just send it
So
right to the administrator. Yeah.
That would be so great, because I know in our area a lot of schools are going through that right now, where they're implementing very strict policies.
Right.
And I think that parents shouldn't have to necessarily explain what's going on, right? Like, we can decide what we want to pack. We don't have to necessarily explain because our child is picky or has a feeding disorder or whatever, or I don't have the money to buy, fruit and vegetables during winter time, whatever it is. I think that's so important that you have something like that for parents. I'm very excited to take a look at.
We're working on a follow-up about food shaming between kids, but since my children are little and so are hers, we're crowdsourcing a bit to try to get more experience on board before tackling that subject.
Great.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the letter from the feeding doctor, if you've seen that one.
Yes, I've seen that one.
Yeah, I'll post a link to that one as well.
Yes,
yeah, you can just print it out and fill in the blank, but what it boils down to is
sweet, and it's perfect.
Yeah. What I send with my child is appropriate for my child. Please don't micromanage them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll post those links as well to this broadcast. And if anyone has any questions, please comment in the field and I'll be looking. And if anything comes up for Naureen, I will tag her in on it and we'll get your questions answered and get you feeling more confident in this journey.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for joining me, Naureen. This is really great information, and I really value you joining me on Naptime Nutrition.
Thanks for having me. It was my pleasure.
Okay. Well, join me next week at 1 p.m. On Tuesday, 3 p.m. East Coast, noon West Coast. I don't remember what my topic is next week, but it's going to be great. I have some really good stuff lined up. So join me then right here on Facebook. Follow me on Pinterest, pinterest.com/Yaffi. And join me in Toddler Test Kitchen. Big things are happening. So I'm also going to post any links to where you can find Naureen, and should you be in her area, or do you do any virtual consulting?
I do.
Oh, okay, great. So you have access to Naureen as well. I'll post all that, and I look forward to any questions. Thank you so much, and see you next time.